Hi, my name is Sarah and I'm an event planner for the Orange County Library System. I plan a lot of author events and writing workshops. And since we're not able to have those at the library right now, I invited some of my writing friends to provide writing tips for you. This one is from New York Times bestselling author and motivational speaker Nathan Whitaker.
Well, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here. Great to have a chance to share. I got into this a little bit later than most. I'm sometimes envious of the people who immediately got into writing. They knew what they were going to do. They either wrote as teenagers or as in their young early 20s and the like. But it wasn't like that for me. I didn't get into writing my first book until I was 37. And that probably was good for me. There's a part of me that thinks that it's probably worth having some life experience and some other things to draw on. At least it wasn't my case. But I'm here as an example of you don't have to get into it right away in order to be able to do it and hopefully make a living out of it. Whether you make a living or not, there's certainly a lot of ways to do it. One of the things that came to me is that I had done a lot of reading, and that was always a big part of, for me, becoming a writer, is that I had done a ton of reading. I was an English major in college. I actually wanted to be a journalism major, but had a chance to go to Duke University. Great experience, but one of the things that I ran into was that they don't have a journalism school. So I was an English major and had a concentration in American Lit. So I read a lot, but didn't do a whole lot of writing other than short papers in reaction to whatever we'd read. In fact, Duke at that time only offered one creative writing class, and I was rejected based on my writing sample. So sometimes I think it took me 15 years to recover from that, to ever decide that I could be a writer. One of the things I've learned over time is that it's worth chipping away at things. And sometimes we are overwhelmed by the size of the task in front of us. And yet I know a bunch of people. My experience was unique in that I practiced law and then worked for the Jacksonville Jaguars and then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and had a chance with the Buccaneers to write my first book about Tony Dungy. And for those of you who don't know, former coach of the Bucs and the Colts. And so we wrote his memoir. That was my first book. And so I got into it that way, which was a little bit different. I have friends who started writing as a second career. They would come home nights and weekends. We'll sometimes hear stories about others who have done that. They get home from their job and they write. And one of the things I learned was that for me, my experience, I had latched on to Tony. He and I were good friends. And Tony pitched me to publishers, even though I hadn't written a book, and said, I'm going to have Nathan write my book. And so I had a contract and I had a month to write it and nothing else to do. And so that was great as far as being able to focus. But one of the things I've seen a lot of friends do is that they will write a little bit every evening. And it's hard and you got a lot going on in life, and I get that. But if you write 3 pages a day, and that comes out to roughly 1,000 words, then in 4 months, you've got a long fiction novel under your belt. Or in 2 months, you'd have a shorter nonfiction book. And so one of the things I've seen friends do over and over is that idea of chipping away. The other thing I would mention with respect to writing and coming to it later is that it's never something that you can't do, in that there are low barriers to entry, right? I mean, sometimes it's really hard to find an agent. It took me quite a while to ever find an agent until I latched on with Tony. Finding a publisher can be really hard, and we all know about those stories. But actually writing, if you have something you want to communicate, something you want to express, being able to do that it really has a low barrier. All you have to do is sit down, open up some sort of program. There's certainly a ton of apps and other things out there that can help you be guided through that process. And so I would encourage anybody, whether you're 22, 15, or like me, 37, or now I'm 51, and still trying to transition into whatever's next, I think I would tell you to go for it and to take a shot. One other tidbit I would share in the little bit of time I've got left. When I first sat down to write Tony's memoir, I called a friend. At the time, I only had one friend who was an author. And I said, what do I do? I've got this contract. I've got time to write it. And here's what do I do to write this book? And he said, write what you would want to read. I said, okay, great. I jotted that down. He said, okay, what's next? He said, that's it. There's nothing else. And there are obviously some things you can do, ways to dress it up. Stephen King will tell you not to put any adverbs in. Others will tell you not to overdo adjectives. And yet you'll see plenty of people do lots of different things. Faulkner used every bit of punctuation there was. James Joyce used none. So really, there aren't very many rules when it comes to how to do it. But my friend's advice was to write what you would want to read. And so for me, I read a lot of mysteries, I read a lot of thrillers, most of it's fiction. And so here I was writing a nonfiction memoir, which didn't seem to apply. But then I realized that there are certain ways in which I like things structured. I like cliffhangers. I like not giving away the endings of a story. So Tony, being somebody who's well read and he's going through his book, and at one point he said, "Hey, the end of this story that you shared in chapter 3, I haven't seen it yet." And I said, "You know what? I put it off till chapter 9. I think if we make the reader work for it, it still works with the flow. And so let's create a moment where the reader's going to have to kind of work for it the way I would in one of my mysteries." And so Tony kept reading and decided that it worked out okay that way. And so we did that. But I realized that writing what I would want to read, that thinking about things as a reader, not necessarily just as a writer, but understanding that I have to communicate something to somebody, was really an important part of being a writer, whether I did it early in my career or late. So best of luck, God bless, and Godspeed.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to be the first to find out when we have new fun and informative videos for you. Orange County Library System is your place to learn, grow, connect.